Congressman John Garamendi is joining us. I believe he's joined also by his wife, Patti, this evening. Thank you so much to the Congressman for taking time out of his evening schedule to be with us. We're very grateful also for the leadership, Congressman, that you provide on Capitol Hill as now the sole RPCV member of Congress. But of course, you've always got Patti at your side, I think, to help, and you've got us behind you and really supporting you. But we're really just so grateful for the steadfast champion that you have been for the Peace Corps over many years, and now so much for the work that you've done and your team has done to put into this legislation that bears your name, and that is so very important for the future of the Peace Corps. Thank you, Congressman, for joining us. Thank you, Patti, for joining us. Lovely to see you both. Thank you for taking this time to have this visit with us at our kickoff day for National Days of Advocacy. Patti, or excuse me, Congressman and Patti, you both served in Ethiopia as Peace Corps volunteers, and I know that other members of your family, your kids, have also served in the Peace Corps. So you both personally know the Peace Corps experience. And so if you don't mind, as you open up here, would share with us your Peace Corps experience and how that experience has helped guide and inform your work on this very important piece of legislation?
Well, I think the answer to that is in the minds and the hearts of every Peace Corps volunteer. The Peace Corps experience simply changes your life. It sets you on a course of service to others. It sets you on a course of generosity of your time, of your spirit, your intellect, and it sets you on a course to build communities, large, small, families, and the rest. And I know that everybody on this call, that's exactly what the Peace Corps did for them. Patti?
Oh, I agree. And Glenn, thank you for what you do. We never take time to recognize you, but you're a rock. And Stephen, I have to do a shout out for you and your Worldview magazine, because I've been your pen pal on it. I'm saving every copy because it's really a work of art. And I was not surprised to see that you had served in Ukraine in 94, 96. And that's when I was working at the Peace Corps as the Associate Director of recruitment, selection, and placement of volunteers all around the world. And it was all the newly independent states, all 13 of them. And Ukraine was set in motion at that time. And been back there many, many times. You never stop serving. I always say a Peace Corps volunteer learns peace, lives peace, and labors for peace from the beginning of their service to the end of their life. And that's what each one of you on this call is doing in some way, and always there. And been able to go back many times to Ukraine, and we're all heartbroken what's happening because we are all Peace Corps family. We care. But thank you for the time. I didn't plan to speak, but thank you, Glenn.
I'm so glad you did, and thank you so much, because you both, you and your husband, embody what it is to serve through a lifetime in support of Peace Corps ideals and to champion the Peace Corps ideal itself. So thank you so much for joining us tonight and for both of you being with us. It's always good to see you. Wish we were on the Hill today. Normally on this day, we would be up on the Hill visiting with you, and we would be kicking off our National Days of Advocacy with a nice breakfast there in one of the conference rooms of the Hill offices, and then getting our steps in back and forth across Capitol Hill as we visited with members of the House and the Senate. So hopefully this will be the second and last virtual National Days of Advocacy kickoff event, and we'll hopefully be able to return to in-person visits relatively soon.
Well,
Yes, sir.
Patti and I certainly look forward to that. The energy that the Peace Corps volunteers bring to the Capitol really moves things along. And even using this Zoom world in which we live, this entire group that is on tonight and many others that are not probably with us tonight have moved the Peace Corps and done it in three different ways. First of all, a determination that even though the Peace Corps was pulled out of virtually every country in the world, the Peace Corps was not over. And the determination by returned Peace Corps volunteers and Peace Corps volunteers that were terminated early, that the Peace Corps would go on, was one of the foundations that allow us to continue the Peace Corps. The second thing is the energy that you bring, not just to the advocacy, but equally important to the structure of legislation. What is it that needs to be in the bill? What do we need to do to improve the Peace Corps? How can we make the Peace Corps better for volunteers and simultaneously better for the communities in which the volunteers serve? And thirdly, this bill would not be moving without you. It was 1999, the last time the Peace Corps was authorized. That was a long time ago. But we're going to get it done this year. The Peace Corps Reauthorization legislation is out of the Foreign Relations Committee by vote. It hasn't yet been brought to the floor, to the Rules Committee, and then to the floor. Some polishing is underway with the language and the coordination of the various sections with existing laws, other laws that are outside of the Peace Corps. That should be completed in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And then we would expect to have this bill on the floor probably late April, and then over to the Senate. And it is in the Senate that I want to draw your attention. I can go through the various parts of the bill if you'd like, Glenn. But in the Senate, we're going to need to put the energy into the Senate. The Senate is busy with all kinds of things, all of them important. And we really have not been able to capture the attention of the Foreign Relations Committee in the Senate. We've worked with Menendez and his staff. They have some somewhat different ideas about how the bill should be structured. And that's okay. We always, different house, different views. But we need to put some energy behind their work and behind our bill, which will be there to hopefully prompt them forward. We got to get this done this year. We do not want the Peace Corps to linger. COVID still is around the world. Some countries are opened, and we may want to talk about that. But the sooner we get the bill passed, the better the Peace Corps will be, and the less potential, small as it may be, for the Peace Corps to wither away. And so we're anxious. All of us are anxious to get it up and get going, and not only with the legislation, but probably more important, with the return to service by volunteers in so many countries around the world.
Most certainly, and we are very excited. Carol Spahn, Acting Director of the Peace Corps, CEO of the Peace Corps now, announced that volunteers are hopefully going to be returning to service as soon as later this month. So we're very excited to hear that and looking forward to it. And I think the situation in the world also reminds us of the importance of the role of having volunteers around the world sharing their perspectives. If you don't mind, Congressman, could you unpack a little bit your legislation, share with us a little bit about some of the things that you feel are most important about it, what are the key provisions of the legislation?
I'd be happy to do that. Because I don't want to miss anything, I'm going to read the notes so that to cover it all. First of all, we authorized the Peace Corps at $600 million annual. That's about $200 million more than the most recent funding over the last several years for Peace Corps. But we wanted to push it up there. That should be enough money, absent more serious inflation, for about 10,000 volunteers. Also, for the volunteers that whose service was interrupted by COVID, there's automatic expedited re-enrollment for them. And I'm sure that the Peace Corps Director, Acting Director, would probably want to talk about that in more detail. We also want to make sure they have the opportunity to return to their country if that is viable. We also direct the Peace Corps to provide benefits, readjustment allowances, health insurance, non-competitive eligibility status for federal hiring to volunteers whose services ended involuntarily due to COVID-19. These are all COVID-19 issues that are going to be impertinent, at least for some while. It also guarantees 3 months of health insurance coverage for returned volunteers to be paid by the Peace Corps, with the option for another 3 months paid for by the volunteer. Currently, there's only 2 months of paid coverage and the option for renewal for 1 month. So it basically doubles the total. We also require the Peace Corps to outline various public and private health insurance options to return volunteers. The good news is that the Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare, really can provide quality insurance in most states. And if you're under the age of 25, requiring that you can re-enroll under your parents' insurance. As we know, there are women in the Peace Corps. And so Grace Ming of New York has introduced the Menstrual Equality Act in the Peace Corps Act. That's been incorporated into the bill, and that's to provide services and other, what shall we say? Material. Thank you, Patti. Materials without charge to the Peace Corps volunteers. As we know, there's always an issue of bad things happening, and so we put into this bill the whistleblower and anti-retaliation protections that currently apply to Peace Corps contractors. These will now apply to volunteers. So when something's amiss, blow the whistle. And when you blow the whistle, there'll be no retaliation to you. And that's, so we want to deal with the known reprisals that have happened, often for Peace Corps employees, for supervisors, for outside, these are reprisals against volunteers by Peace Corps employees, volunteer supervisors, or outside contractors. Representative Albiel Sirius of New Jersey introduced a bill called the Respect for Peace Corps Volunteer Act. That is also in this bill. And we go beyond that. We extend the Peace Corps volunteers 12-month hiring preference for most public jobs. We extend that during any federal hiring freeze, government shutdown, public health emergency such as COVID, or while the volunteer receives federal workers' compensation benefits for an injury during their Peace Corps service. We really want to get these Peace Corps volunteers back into government. As all of us may know, and certainly Patti and I do, given our service in the administration, we know that often the very best men and women in the government are Peace Corps volunteers, particularly in the Foreign Service and the, you worked with them in the Foreign Agricultural Service.
Foreign Agricultural.
Yeah. Let's see, we also require the Peace Corps and the U.S. State Department Bureau of Diplomatic Security to update plans and protocols for Peace Corps volunteers security support and protection while in foreign countries. And finally, we deal with workers' compensation. We increase the workers' compensation rate for all Peace Corps volunteers that have been injured or disabled during their service from the GS7, which is pretty close to the bottom, to the GS11 level. And that's the same rate provided for volunteers with dependent children under the current law. That's basically it, as you can see from these various elements. What the bill does is work upon the efforts of return volunteers Sam Farr and Nick Castle, who wrote the Peace Corps Reform Act of 2018. That obviously didn't, and that was public law 115.256. Also the Katie Kunze Peace Corps Volunteer Protection Act, and that's 2011. So we're building upon those, updating them in various ways. And we finally, a good portion of this comes from the hectoring, the encouragement, and the you damn well better get it done, John. Sam Farr of California, who served in Colombia in 1964 to 66. Unfortunately, he decided to retire from Congress 5 years ago. And finally, as I said, the last Peace Corps reauthorization was in 1999. We presently have 114 co-sponsors. We'll get more. The bill passed out of the Foreign Relations Committee on a 44-4 vote. So we're in good shape when we go to the floor. We'll have a good many Republicans. We would expect to see almost all Democrats on this bill. Right now, my concern is not so much the House, it's simply a matter of time and prodding and pushing to get it on the schedule. And finally, the problem that I really want to focus on is to get the Senate to focus on this. Obviously, there are many, many things that all of us are dealing with, and certainly the Foreign Affairs and Foreign Relations Committee have all of the troubles of the world on their agenda. So that's it, Glenn. And if there are questions, maybe I can answer them. I'll leave Patti to carry on with how all of this will work.
Great, thank you. That's a great recap. There are so many important provisions in this piece of legislation, and I know you and your staff, especially Ian Hart, have worked very hard on it. We've really enjoyed the collaborative effort between National Peace Corps Association and your team. Thank you all and both of you so much for that. I hear, some things.
Excuse me, Glenn. I forgot one very, very important piece of this. The elements that are in this bill specifically for the volunteers, from the reprisal to the workers' compensation and the benefits, those are in the bill because the National Peace Corps Association would not let them be removed. There were a lot of pushing and shoving, and one of the reasons this thing has been slow to come is we had to overcome some very significant opposition, and that opposition was finally overcome because of the advocacy of you and your organization. And so this is a bill that comes directly from the Peace Corps Association, from the volunteers that are in that group, as well as volunteers that would just return from service or involuntarily return from service. So Glenn, a shout out to you and to the organization.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. We're not going to let all this hard work be in vain. We're going to join with you and do our part to advocate in the House and the Senate, even more so now, to ensure that these bills move forward. You've given us a call to action here. We know what we have to do, and that's why we're here tonight, is to make sure that this is understood as a key priority for our Peace Corps community when it comes to legislation.
And Glenn, as soon as we know the calendar and when this bill will be brought to the floor, we should have a couple of weeks of head start on that. We'll let you know, and you can do what you guys do so very well. Contact your congressman and woman and bang away on them.
Thank you. And to mention, you mentioned that the funding recommendations in this bill would lead it up to a $600 million level from what has been flat funding for the last 7 years of around $410 million. And accounting for inflation, Peace Corps has definitely lost a lot of purchasing power in that 7 years. And also, these provisions, many of them come with a cost. So increasing the Peace Corps budget is as important as the provisions themselves, in the sense that there needs to be funding to account for the loss of buying power and inflation, but also to ensure that these reforms and improvements that Peace Corps needs to implement can be implemented with the resources that they need.
Patti poked me and she said, what?
The readjustment allowance, that was a big deal. I mean, we all got $6,000 like forever and ever and ever. Now it's 10,000. It's still not very much, but it gives everybody a head start getting back into graduate school or whatever they need to do. And that was another battle along the way. So it's good we have a little extra funding there.
Patti, you didn't have to poke me. I knew that was the right thing to do.
No, I should remind you to tell them.
Oh, okay.
Well, we thank you so much. We all pledge our commitment to do our best to advocate as hard as we can for this bill to move through the House and then the Senate as well. And this is our opportunity. This is our window of opportunity this year in the 117th Congress, and we're going to make it happen. We've got some really energized and inspired people out here. Thanks to you for coming and helping motivate us on this. We're very grateful for your service to our country, and both of you for your service to the Peace Corps community. Thank you for taking time to join us this evening too.
Thank you, Glenn.